Hello everyone, thank you for joining me for another entry into our reading journal. I am Voodoo Pickles and we're going to be talking about The Book Eaters, which is written by Sonia Dean, published in 2022, and is labeled as fiction, fantasy, horror, and LGBTQIA+ for their genres. And I read this in the digital version through my Libby app, and there'd be heavy spoilers, obvious. But thank you guys so much for sticking around and hanging out and talking about this book with me. So this book looks at a species called the Book Eaters. This species lives around the world, but as humans became more technologically advanced and started keeping track of like people and everything, the Book Eaters became very isolated, and we're gonna be focusing on the UK Book Eaters. So in the UK, there are 4 families of Book Eaters. Each family is very secluded off into their own little section of the UK, and they only have contact with each other when there's a marriage taking place. Because within this species, women and the female type of this species is extremely rare, and their population has been declining because there's not enough females being born. And when a female is born, she can only have 2 children. She only gets pregnant twice. And then for some reason, she just becomes infertile after that. And it is implied that these species they live longer. They have kind of like super strength, super speed stuff, but not a ridiculous amount. And what they eat are books. They eat anything that has printed words on them. So I guess back in the olden days, it was like quill and parchment, everything. Now it's actual books. And this story follows Devon, where she was born into one of these families. And the families are working on researching the infertility of their species and how their numbers are declining. But when a female part of their species is born, she is more secluded than the families are secluded. Like she's secluded from within the families. She's not taught anything about the family dynamics. She's not taught anything about the family businesses. She is told that she is a little princess, and then she's gonna go off and meet her prince when she gets older and be a part of continuing her family. And these girls are fed fairy tales, because when a book eater eats the books, and they actually like rip off the pages and eat them, they also consume the words that were written on them. So when they eat stories, they consume those stories as well. So they just have this growing knowledge within them. So she's fed fairy tales just like all the other girls of her species, and except when she's in trouble, which she's fed dictionaries. And this kind of goes on. Most of the girls within this family, they're put in big fluffy dresses. They are just kind of sequestered off with their fairy tales and have tea parties and have toys and everything like that. Devon's a little different than the girls that are around her, which there aren't many. I think that she only meets other females within her species when they're like one time when there's a marriage. Other than that, she's not really around them at all. So she's a little different. She's raised with her brothers, her cousins, and all of the men in her family. And because of that, and the way that her family is secluded off in a wooded area of the UK, she grows up a lot outside. She plays with her brothers, and so she's very tomboy. She's very outside. And she's also a little rebellious. She doesn't like to follow the rules of her family. She's always asking why things are happening. And she's very headstrong in that way. And she calls him her uncle, is very kind of indulgent to that. So she grows up like this, and she's not actually taught consequences until there's a marriage within her family. one of the a woman is brought to their house, and there's a marriage ceremony going on, and her brothers get bored at the party, and they decide to go off and play like children do. And so they go off and play. And there's, within the book eaters, there's also a little smaller section of book eaters that don't eat books, that are born to book eaters. They're called mind eaters because, spoiler alert, they eat people's like thoughts and consciousness. They're born with like a long tube-like tongue, which in the book, I forget the word. It starts with a P, I think, but it's like an insect tongue. It's a long tubey tongue, kind of like rolls out of their mouth. And because everything that the book eaters and the mind eaters consume, they obtain the knowledge. With book eaters, they eat books. They obtain the knowledge of those books. With mind eaters, they obtain the thoughts, the feelings, the consciousness of whoever they feed on. So the mind eaters are also, they're told that they're never full. So they become a feared thing to have within the species. And a lot of the infants that are born to mind eaters are killed. And because of this, it dwindled down their population numbers a lot more than what it was already dwindling down. And as a result of that, one of the families started researching more into the mind eaters and was able to develop a serum. The serum allows the mind eaters to not feed on minds. It's kind of like Blade, where he gets the serum so he doesn't have to feed on blood. It's like that, but for the mind eaters, and it works. But those mind eaters, if they've already consumed a mind, which most of them had by that point, because that's all they had before the serum was made, they still crave people's minds and they become a little crazy. So the way the families decided to deal with this is there's another faction made up of all the families. They're called the Knights. They're made up of men from each different family. They're taken as children, and they're brought up to protect the families, to police the families, to monitor the marriages between the families. So there's like the inbreeding is down to a minimum, and they just kind of make sure that all of that's taken care of. So as a part of them policing the families, they took these mind eaters, gave them serums, cut off their tongues so that they couldn't feed on minds even if they got free, and kind of train them to be aggressive but to follow commands, like attack dogs. And they started calling these mind eaters dragons. And dragons are feared. Dragons are very much like, they're looked at like rabid animals within the book eaters. So when these marriages take place, the knights take the woman from whatever family she comes from, and they escort her all the way to her new house. And when she's there, they observe the marriage ceremony, make sure everything's copacetic, and then they leave. They tell the bride and the person who they're married to and everything they'll be back after she's had a baby. Like, we'll be back later, here you go. And so during this marriage, when Devon and her brothers, her favorite brother was Ramsay. Her and Ramsay decide that they wanted to see what a dragon looks like because they've heard stories, and just like usual children, they're curious. So they kind of goad each other on who's going to be able to see the dragon. They know where the dragon is at. The dragons for the knights are kept in the library because it's fine for them to be in there. They don't eat books. So the children go and they sneak and they try and see a dragon, and they're caught by one of the knights. And one of the knights is explaining to Devon that because she's a girl and they're going to need her, they cannot punish her the way that her breaking the rules would require to be punished. But they still tell her, like, obviously there's going to be consequences for your actions, and you need to know that as a girl, when you have consequences, it'll be meted out to your family. And she doesn't really understand this until after the marriage, when everybody's leaving. The knights take Ramsay. And she's really upset by it, and her uncle lets her know that this is the consequence for her actions. She should have never have done the thing. But he's also feeling like, it's okay, it's fine, that doesn't concern you. It's okay, here, have some fairy tales to eat. And she's really upset, she's really distraught. She still eats the fairy tales that she's given, but she also starts to do something that's forbidden for the book eaters, which is she starts to read. The book eaters do not allow reading. They just allow the consumption of the materials in a different way, which I thought was just fascinating. So when Devon is 18, she is married off to a family, as is what happens when girls are 18. And because she was raised on fairy tales, and after Ramsay was taken, she stopped being as rebellious at home. So she started believing more in these fairy tales. And she was given like romances and stuff that her family believed she should be able to consume. And it was always the mundane things over and over and over until she was 18. And when she gets to her new husband's home, she meets all of these other women. And it's all of the women that have already had their children. And once you have your children as a woman in this species, you're able to travel wherever you want to go. You're able to freely move between the houses and kind of have more of an active role. But mostly they're just kind of like, all right, they're just left alone. They help raise the children in the house wherever they're at. And most of them just end up kind of drinking and just going from party to party because they can, and there's nothing else for them to do. So she meets all of these other women, and they're all telling her, this is super great, this is super exciting, your first marriage, yay. And she's talking about, I hope my husband likes me, I hope that this is really great for us. And they're like, oh honey, it's gonna be bad. It's gonna be bad, but all you have to do is have your 2 children, and that's it. It's like, have your 2 children and you're free. And that's what you have to hang on to. And Devon is really surprised by the talking over there, but they have this type of thing where they have ink distilled into tea or their drinks. So she's given a bunch of wine for the very first time. So obviously she gets drunk. And when the marriage ceremony is done, she blacks out. And her husband takes advantage of this as assault. And so when she's kept in this room, she tries to talk to the other women around, but because she's seen as temporary, they refuse to talk to her. Everybody refuses to talk to her except for her husband, who doesn't like her and just kind of tells her to go off and do her thing and see you tonight. She has her own room. She's given fairy tale books and ink tea every day, and she's just kind of told to stay there. And so she's realizing that this marriage isn't actually a happily ever after. It's not like an actual marriage. She's just kind of there. And she gets pregnant. And when she gets pregnant, everybody kind of dotes on her a little bit to take care of her while she's pregnant. And then when she has her baby, she finds out it's a girl. And everybody is super excited because obviously that's very rare. So her husband within this house is super excited, just is really happy that she increased his value as his family's value. And usually within this culture, the species, when the baby is born, the baby is taken away from the mother. so that the mother cannot attach to the baby, and only brought to the mother when the baby needs to feed. Other than that, the baby is taken care of by the aunts or the women and the men within the house. The baby is just kind of taken away from the mother. And Devon cannot stand this. Devon has the baby. She sees her daughter and she starts fighting and screaming and just fighting to keep the baby with her. And everybody's trying to rip the baby out of her arms. She's not letting that happen. She starts biting at people. And book eaters and mind eaters have different types of teeth. They have their normal the teeth that look like humans, but for book eaters, they have these like, I guess like fangs. Like both of them have these type of fangs that come out that they call their book teeth or their mind teeth. And so she brings out her extra teeth and she starts biting at people until her husband's like, just leave her alone. I can't work with all of this noise. I need peace and quiet. So just let her have the baby for now. Just let her have the baby. And the women are telling him that's a bad idea because she won't want to leave the baby. And he's like, I don't care. I just need quiet. This is giving me a headache and I can't stand it. So let her have the baby. So they leave her and the baby. And she's able to raise her own child, which is unheard of in this culture. It's unheard of. But she's able to do it and she is super happy. She is so happy raising her baby. The baby gets gifts from her family, her husband, everything. Everybody gives the baby gifts. She has little cute dresses. They dress up together. They dress the same. She goes on tea parties with her. They both still eat the fairy tales, and until they still eat the fairy tales, and they're just kind of there. And Devon is so happy. When the baby is about 3 years old, like her third birthday is happening, Devon is going to ask her husband if she can stay, because within this culture, when the baby turns 3 on her third birthday, on the baby's third birthday, the mother's taken back, because if the baby's just being brought there for feedings from the mother, then at this point the baby is weaned, everything's fine. The mother is taken away, and her next marriage is being planned when that happens. Like that's their whole cycle of it. So she is going to her husband and she's begging him to let her stay. Like she's just begging, don't separate me from my child. And he's like, okay. He was like, you know what? We can spare you. We can see if we can spare you, have you be spared for a few more years, just a few more years. And so she's super happy. There's this huge, lavish birthday party that's planned, and her husband's like, yeah, we'll see if you can be spared for a few more years. I'll talk to the knights. Here, have some of this tea. And grateful, she's like, yes, thank you. She has some of the tea. She wakes up right as the car is being pulled up to her family's home, which is miles and miles away from where her daughter is, as she realizes that her husband lied to her, that she was taken back. She's still wearing the same party dress she had. She is taken back there. The knights are carrying her out and explaining to her family that she didn't want to leave. And so she fights them, makes a run for it, starts running, and she's like, I have no idea where my daughter is in comparison to where I live. She's like, but I'll figure it out. I'm just gonna run down this hill. They can't catch me. I'm faster than them. So she runs and she runs and she runs, but they release a couple of the dragons to catch her. And the dragons, the knights, they catch her before she can reach the edge of her family's property, and they bring her back. And they keep trying to like convince her to do the right things and everything, and she's just completely depressed. She's like, I want my daughter. I want to see my daughter. And then she is able to see her husband. Her husband comes to her family's house and she's extremely angry at him. She wants to hurt him. But he's like, here. He gives her a locket that has a picture of her daughter, and she's just so excited to see a picture of her daughter. And he tells her, if you do what you're supposed to, and you don't make waves, you don't try to escape anymore, on her 10th birthday, I'll let you see her. But you have to be good. You have to do what you're supposed to. Otherwise, you will never see her again, and I will tell her that you abandoned her and you never loved her. And so she's heartbroken, but she's like, it's okay, I can still see her on her 10th birthday. So that's what Devon does. Devon puts her head down and she's like, all right, I can do this. After my second marriage, she's like, it'll be fine. She's like, I won't attach to that baby. I won't do it. She's like, and then on my daughter's 10th birthday, I'll be able to see her. And she's like, maybe I can steal her and we can run away together. So that's what she clings to. And then a little while later, she's married off again to a different family who lives by a beach. And this family is more technologically advanced than the rest of the families. Most of the other families still use like oil lamps. They live in like more of an older time set, and that's kind of how they have just the way they are. This family doesn't. They have electricity, they have humans, workers that work their area, like their farms and everything like that. They contract out work to human doctors for the fertility issues that they're researching. They have giant screen TVs, they watch movies, like they're more within the modern age than the rest of the families. So she's married off to this family. She just keeps telling herself, it's fine. I can get through this. I just need to get through this so I can get to my daughter. I just need to get to my daughter. It's going to be fine. I can get through this. So she knows that this family doesn't care about her. She's like, obviously, just like last time, they're not even going to bother talking to me. I can't even. So she ends up wandering around and she finds this little like den area. And she looks in it and she goes, there's a TV there and there's video gaming systems there. And she's just kind of like poking at things because she's never seen video games. She's never seen a TV. She has no idea what any of this is. And then she meets her new brother-in-law. I don't remember his name. Hopefully I'll be able to look it up. If I do, it'll put it somewhere. If I don't, I'm just going to call him her brother-in-law. And he's the only person there that's nice to her. He's the only person that talks to her like a person, which she really enjoys. So they start talking. He's like, after a while, he's like, do you want to play a video game? And she asks him what that is. So he explains to her that, one, she's just completely ass backwards. She should know what a video game is. And he introduced her to Tomb Raider. And so she starts playing like Tomb Raider, and she starts playing different games. And while she's there, every day when she wakes up and she's on with her day, she's like, she can't sit in her room anymore because she's all angsty. So she goes to this gaming room and he meets her there and they just hang out. They hang out, they drink, they play video games, they talk, they read comic books together, they just kind of hang out, and they start confiding in each other. He lets her know that this used to be his sister's room before she started getting married off, and now she just travels from party to party like the rest of the women. And he's like, yeah, I miss her, like she was really great. And he asks her like, how is she doing, is she okay? And she's just like, no, I'm not okay. And then she gets pregnant again. And when she finds out she's pregnant, she's happy to be pregnant, so she's closer to being with her daughter. But she is unbelievably depressed about being pregnant because of all of that having to leave the baby again and having to relive that type of trauma. But she keeps telling herself it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I won't get attached to this one. I won't get attached to this one. As soon as the baby is born, I will let the women take the baby and it'll be fine. And then I can go see my daughter. And that's kind of what she's clinging to. And when she's pregnant, she still plays video games with her brother-in-law. They talk about all kinds of things. And one of the times they're hanging out, she's just like, why couldn't I be married to you? And he's like, well, I'm not the oldest. He's like, the oldest. That's their responsibility, is to be the husband. And she was like, that's so sad. She's like, you would have been a great husband. And he tells her, he's like, I don't know if I would be a great husband. He's like, I don't think I could do that. As she thinks from her previous experiences that he wouldn't be able to do that to a wife. And he was like, no. He's like, I'm not attracted to women. And she's like, oh, okay. And she's like, well, why don't you find a boyfriend? And he's like, I'm not attracted to guys either. And he's like, I'm just not attracted to anybody, really. And he's like, I don't have those urges, that drive. And she's like, oh, okay. And then she confides in him that she's attracted to women and she doesn't like men. And he's like, yeah. He's like, I get that. And that's just kind of how that conversation goes. And they just continue to go hang out and play video games. And once she's pregnant, she stops drinking alcohol and she goes back to the AT, but they still hang out. And the further along she gets in her pregnancy, the more she is upset. The more she's just like, I wish that I could be more like one of these video game characters. She's like, I want to be Lara Croft. She's like, I want to be able to go and be on adventures and to go where I want to go and to save people and to get the hidden treasure. And she's like, have adventures. And she's like, I'm so sick of being in this box that I'm in. And she's like, being a woman in this is one of the worst things I could ever think that to happen. And during this conversation, her brother-in-law's like, what if you didn't have to be? It's just, what do you mean? And he starts talking to her about escaping. And he said he doesn't like the world they live in. He doesn't like being surrounded with their species and these older houses and families that are operating like this continuously. And he's like, I can't stand it. And he tells her that he has been planning an escape from the families and the knights and the dragons, and just planning on escaping. And he said, he's like, if I can get to Ireland, he's like, I can find somebody that can get me documents so I can go wherever I want. He was like, I might go to the States. He was like, I've been thinking about Australia, maybe Africa. He's like, I don't know where. He's like, but if I can get to Ireland, I can leave. He's like, and I can be free from this family. And so he's like, why don't you come with me? And she's at first very like, that'll never work. This can't happen. They'll never let us go. They'll find us. And he's like, well, it could work. It could. As she comes around, she's like, all right, let's do that. Let's escape. Let's escape. And she's like, after I have this baby, they'll take the baby, and she's like, we'll escape. And she's like, then I can figure out a way to take my daughter. She was like, maybe we can swing by where this other family is and I can kidnap my daughter and we can all leave. And she's getting more excited about the idea. So he starts giving her other things besides fairy tales to eat. He starts giving her maps, and she's talking about how the pages are gross and how they leave a film in your mouth. So they actually use like ketchup and mustard to kind of roll up the pages like a hot dog and kind of smother it in ketchup. And that's how she's able to tolerate some of the maps, which cracked me up as well. Like, as I used to be a very picky eater, so I would have to cover things up in ketchup or in hot sauce or something to be like, this is the only way I could eat this. So I felt that, and it cracked me up so much. But she starts eating maps. She starts eating manuals on like land navigation and all of these little things that he think would be able to help. But he mostly wants her to know where she's at and where they need to go. So she's like there, she's eating train schedules and everything. She's pumped to do this. And then when it's happening that it's time for her to give birth to her second child, she is very hesitant, everything, but they were able to bring a human doctor to do an ultrasound on her, where they found out that she's having a boy. And she's like, okay. She's like, well, if I'm having a boy, at least my boy will never be subjected to this type of life. So I feel better about leaving him now, because I know he won't be put what she's been put through. And the husband's not happy that she's having a boy. He was hoping that she would have a girl. And he kind of, not bribed, but kind of bribed the Knights that his house would be her next marriage. So hopefully she could have another girl, but she doesn't. And so he's kind of upset by it, but the day comes where she has the baby. And so she has the baby. She's feeling the feelings that she felt before, to where she's just like, this is one of the cutest babies ever. And when they hand the baby to her, she looks at the baby, and the baby has a mind eater's tongue that rolls out. And this causes all of the women in the room to panic. They let her husband know that this is a mind eater, it's not a book eater. So the husband comes in, tries to yank the baby out, but sees the tongue, and he was like, all right, well, we're gonna kill it. And Devin freaks out, obviously, and she's like, you can't kill my son. She's like, there's serum now. He's like, just pay for the serum. And he's arguing with her. He doesn't want to pay for it. He said, that's an extra expense that I do not want to take on. And he tries to grab the baby from her, but she attacks him. Like, she's full on, all she's seen is red, and she attacks him. She attacks some of the women nearby. She attacks the men out there. She breaks somebody's arm, and she's just like, nobody's gonna touch my son. So he's like, fine, I'll pay for the serum for now. And so they're sequestered off into a tower area, into a secluded part of the mansion that she's living in, and she's not allowed to leave and go back to the gaming room or anything. She always has to be with her son Kai, to make sure that nobody comes and tries to hurt him or anything, or that he doesn't like latch on to somebody and start to eat them. So when Kai is about 2 years old, she realizes that it's going to be another year that they're going to be there, and she's starting to worry about what's going to happen to Kai. She's worried that they're going to make him into a dragon, and she's like, well, maybe we can take him too. We'll take him, we'll swing by, pick up my daughter, and we'll all head to Ireland. And she's like, her brother-in-law will be the best doting uncle ever. And so she's like, that's kind of what we're planning on doing. And she's like, all right, cool. That's what she's wanting to plan. She's starting to make plans for this. And when Kai's around 2 years old, her husband comes to the tower, the part of the mansion that she was pushed off to with her son, and tells her that she's leaving. And she's like, what do you mean? And he's like, the Knights are coming. They're downstairs. He's like, they're gonna take you, and they're gonna take your son. And she's like, oh, okay, well, we're going to go to my family's, right? And he's like, you're going to your family's. He's going with them. And she starts freaking out. And she's like, no, why would you do that? And he was like, I don't want to have a mind eater in my house. And she's like, well, there's serum now. And he lets her know that the family that created the serum and sells the serum to the other families, they had a coup. So the patriarch of that family was killed. And then the whole family got up and disappeared. Nobody knows where that family is. So he's like, there's no serum now. There's no serum now. He's like, and I'm not keeping it around here. So she tries to fight him again because he goes to reach for Kai. Kai starts screaming because he's a 2-year-old. And she starts fighting against him. And he starts to fight back with her. And then we start at the beginning of the book. The beginning of the book talks about Devin and Kai. Devin is trying to find somebody, just some random person out on the street. She finds a pastor who's kind of down on his luck because she tells him, like, yeah, I need your help. I need you to come talk to me. And they head back to where she, like, her hotel room where she's hiding. And she's like, I need your help. And so he's like, okay, what do you need? And she asks him, are you a good person? And apparently she asks all of the people she brings to her hotel this, are you a good person? And she pushes him into the bathroom of the hotel room, grabs the door, closes it, and holds it. And then when the screaming stops, she like scampers away and then starts drinking because she has to feed Kai. So Kai is now 5 or 6 years old, and he is been feeding on 5 years old because it's been 3 years they've been on the run. They've been on the run for 3 years. For those 3 years, Kai has not had serum. So he has been needing to feed on people's minds. So Devin makes it her chore whenever he gets too hungry that she goes off, she finds a person that she thinks is at least decent, brings them back. Kai feeds on them, and then she either gets rid of the bodies, but sometimes Kai doesn't always kill them when he's done feeding, and they're just kind of in this lobotomized state. So she takes them to homeless shelters and just kind of pushes them up against the homeless shelter, leaves, and they're found out, but nobody knows what's wrong with them, and she's just kind of like, not my problem anymore. But because she's had to do this, she became an alcoholic to handle what she does to feed her son. And she's been running from the Knights, been running from the families for these 3 years, and she stole money from her second husband to kind of help them go along. She also steals things from other people. Sometimes she'll steal things from the people that she feeds to her son. So she's trying to find the family that went missing, because 3 years later, nobody knows where this family is still. There's no serum coming out, so they've gone back to mostly killing the Mind Eater children. But a lot of the families just kept pushing that on to the Knights, and the Knights are like, we're running out of serum. So everybody's trying to find this family. And she's trying to find a family to get enough serum for Kai so that she could still at least have him okay. And she doesn't like feeding him people, because once he feeds on people, he feeds on their thoughts, their feelings, their memories, and he starts taking personality traits on from them. And she says that's the most disturbing part, is after he's done feeding, he'll talk to her like a grown-up, like an adult, just like the person that she just fed to him. So they're running, like they're on the run like this. They stay in one place for a little bit, and then they keep going, and then they keep going. And because Kai is a mind eater and not a book eater, he can kind of write. And that's another thing with the book eaters, is because they consume the words, they cannot write words. They cannot write books. They cannot like write down anything, even texting. She can't do that. So she has Kai help her with that, with writing and everything, composing messages. And so this is what they've been doing for 3 years. She's been trying to find this family all by herself while running away from the Knights. And so that's what she's doing. And then after this first feeding, she's like, we have to move again. And he's like, okay, well, when's that gonna happen? And she's like, well, I don't know, but I feel like we're gonna have to do that again. And she keeps talking about how she needs to contact somebody. She's like, we'll move once I contact somebody. I think we need to move, but I'll need to verify after I contact somebody. And she doesn't tell Kai who she's contacting, and that's all we kind of hear. And about a couple of days later, Kai keeps telling her, he's like, I'm hungry again. I'm hungry. And once it gets to a certain level of him like screeching at her, I'm hungry, that's when she starts like, okay, I need to find another victim for him. And while they're running around and everything, she tries to find another victim. She goes to a bar and she meets this woman named Hester. And she likes Hester. They talk, they hang out for like an hour or two in the bar, kind of chatting, and she's just really like, I wish this could be my real life. I really wish this was real life, to where I'm just in a bar chatting to a pretty woman. And she flirts with the woman and asks her, do you want to come up to my room? And the woman says yes. So they're flirting all the way back to the room. And she does the same thing. She pushes her in. She asks her if she's a good person. She pushes her in the bathroom, closes it, and she doesn't hear any screaming. And then she starts to get worried. She's like, could this person hurt Kai? So she starts getting worried, and then when she opens up the door, she sees that Kai is fine. He's not screeching that he's hungry anymore, because he gets more aggressive and stronger and like feral when he's too hungry. And she sees him just sitting there playing on his little Game Boy that she got him, or that she gave to him, because her brother-in-law gave that to her when she had Kai, because he wouldn't be able to see her again. And that's what she gave to Kai to kind of center him and calm him down. So he's playing right there, and Hester's like asking him questions about the game and just kind of being like, what's that? What's this? And Devon's kind of freaking out, and Hester lets her know that she's a part of that family that creates the serum. Their family Ravenscar. Is that what? Yeah, Ravenscar. So she's like, I'm part of family Ravenscar. She's like, we've been watching you. And she's like, what do you mean? She's like, I've been looking for you. And she's like, yeah, we know. That's why we've been watching you. We needed to see if you were in contact with any of the families, any of the Knights. We heard what you did. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, we heard you killed your husband after he tried to attack Kai. And you stole his money and you ran off. And you've been on the run ever since. And she's like, yeah, that's what happened. So Hester's telling Devon that my family wants to meet you. She's like, they want to talk to you. And they sent me to come and get you, if you want to go. And Devon's like, obviously I want to go, because my son needs the serum. So they decide that they're going to go follow along with Hester. And Hester's like, okay, well, I can't tell you where we're going, but the further we go, I'll let you know how close we are to getting to the end point. And while they leave, they see a knight down the road, and they start panicking. And the knight starts chasing them. There's dragons. There's this whole chase through London, and they're going on the tube. And while they're going on the tube, there's this huge chase. Hester pulls out a gun. She starts firing at dragons, which apparently nobody ever thought to get a gun from the book eaters or anything. They don't really know how that works. They're just like, we don't use that. So Hester starts shooting and kills dragons. She kills a couple of knights, and they get on the train and they're being chased. Devon notices that she's being chased by Ramsay, and Ramsay's a full-on knight now with his own dragons, and he's chasing her. She starts to freak out more, pushes them ahead in the train, on the train, and tells them, like, all right, you guys keep going over here. I'm gonna go see if I can cause a distraction over back this way so that we can get the knights away from us or get to a more crowded area. So she goes back, and then we find out that she's been working with Ramsay to find the Raven scars. When she killed her husband, she did not. Ramsay killed her husband, and he killed all of his men and everybody in that tower that was not him, Kai, or Devon. And he told her that he needed her to work with him. He needed her to work with. She's like, why? And he's like, because the family won't trust anybody else. But if they think you escaped, they'll trust you. And you can take Kai with you. So he gave her some serum. He busted open the safe, gave her money, and then he implanted an explosive device into Kai in front of her. Like, he took her to the compound where the knights are, and she saw Kai in the operating room, and she's like, what's going on? It's like, if you decide to go rogue on me, if you decide to double cross me, if you decide not to follow along with my plans or anything like that, if I think that you're not following along with my plans, and he's like, all I have to do is press a button, and no matter where you are, he's like, boom. And he's like, the explosive will be in Kai. So she starts freaking out a little bit, but she's like, there's no need to be hasty. It's fine. I will do whatever you want. Just don't hurt my son. And so that's just kind of been, for the 3 years, he's been giving her information about where the Raven scars are. They've been going to where those at, causing kind of a ruckus, trying to find them. And he's been following along just behind her, and that's how she's been able to survive for so long. Evading them was because she was working with him. But he's the only knight that knows. So he asks what's going on, and she's like, they found me. She's like, that's Raven Scar in there. She's going to take us. And he's like, where are they taking you? She's like, I don't know. They're just going to let me know how far we're going. So he's like, all right, keep in regular contact with me. And he was like, we'll tail you from a distance. And she's like, make it a very big distance because she'll be able to see we're getting out of the city. So he's like, all right, cool. And she goes back forward there. And then to create a distraction, Ramsay kills a bunch of humans in the train and cuts the power to the lights, so it's dark, and it's able to look like she did something that caused a ruckus, so the humans are paying attention over here while they're over there, and everything's fine. And they go off to get closer to where Hester tells them they need to go. They're able to buy a car. They're able to, like, track through the countryside. And then while they're doing that, Ramsay goes back to the knights and he performs his own little coup. There is the knight general that Ramsay feels is very weak. And Ramsay, as he became a part of the knights, we hear how he was so scared when it happened, and then once he gave himself fully to the knights, he stopped being as scared and started being an actual knight. And he's like, I can be better than this person. So he kills the knight general and calls him weak. And then he challenges the rest of the knights that are around him to either fall in line or step up and try and knock him down. And they all fall in line, and there's not a lot of them left because there's no serum, so dragons are attacking their knights, and they're having to fight for that. There's not a lot of females around to keep, babies coming, so there hasn't been this huge influx of knights, so their numbers are dwindled. So nobody fights him. Everybody's just like, well, what are we doing now, boss? And he tells them, we're going to go to the Ravenscar compound. He's like, I have somebody on the inside. We need to get all of our forces and prepare to attack. So while they're traveling, Devin, Hester, and Kai, they're all just kind of hanging out. And it's a cute little adventure from them just going from London to where they're going. And she finds out they're going to Scotland. So they're going over there on the trip. They just kind of hang out. They start trusting each other more because Hester told Devin that she can't tell her where they're going in case something happens. But Devin's able to build on this trust a little bit to be like, all right, well, I need to know, and if you don't trust me, I can't trust you, and it's like, and then therefore I can't trust you with Kai. So they slowly start to share information back and forth, and this journey takes days for them to go. And so they slowly start to exchange information, and Devin was like, I really like Hester. They really start hanging out and becoming very friendly. Hester is like, it becomes kind of like an aunt to Kai, like she hangs out with them a lot. And Kai remarks on how Devin hasn't been drinking on this trip as much. And so they're just kind of making their way towards. Eventually, Hester tells Devin, okay, this is where we're going. This is the town that we settled in after the coup. And so they're just hanging out like, okay. Devin kind of scampers off and lets Ramsey know this is the place. This is the location. This is the house that they're living in. So Devin asks them, like, when are you going to get there? She's like, tomorrow we should be there. And he's like, okay, at midnight, we're attacking. And she tries to kind of talk him out of it. She's like, we should have more time. I don't know if that's true or not. And he's like, no, midnight, that's it. That's when we're attacking. So they get to the town that the Ravenscars are living in. And when they're there, Hester introduced Devin to the new patriarch, which was Hester's brother. And well, Devin realizes that there's something off with this patriarch. And the patriarch is super excited that Kai is a mind eater. And Devin realizes that everybody in that family is a mind eater, that there are no book eaters within this family. As she becomes uncomfortable, and the patriarch lets her know, you are welcome here because of Kai. Like, Kai is more than welcome to stay, and as your mother, we extend you that invitation as well. And there is this whole little like sermon thing that the patriarch puts on, where Devin realizes he's a little fanatical, that he's not really making sense. And he decided that there shouldn't be any more serum, that every mind eater should be enjoying eating the minds of others, and they should do this fairly regularly. And as a show of this, he has a human that is brought to him in this cathedral church type stuff that's attached to this old mansion that they live in. And he eats the mind of that person in front of the rest of the family, as she realizes that a lot of the other family members are like, yes, they're fully on board. She's excited to realize that Kai is uncomfortable, and he looks away. She looks away. Later that night, they're like, okay, well, I don't like this. And Kai's like, I don't think this is a good idea for us to stay here. And she agrees. And she's like, all right, we won't stay here. She's like, but I need the recipe for the serum. I need serum to make sure that you're okay. While she's wandering around the grounds, because nobody is really around, she finds a human journalist. And this human journalist was kidnapped because he stumbled on to the book eaters, one of the families, and he started writing an article about this family, and when he noticed that they weren't really human-like, so the book eaters kidnapped him. And he was kept alive by this family in particular, and by the patriarch now, because he can write for them, and they can't write, so they keep him around. They broke his leg in 2 places, so he has a severe limp and he can't go very far. So that's just kind of how they keep him close to the mansion. As she talks to him, she's talking to him about the serum, and he's like, I need you to either kill me or help me get out. He's like, I've been here for over 10 years. So she tells him, you do this for me, you help me get that serum and that recipe. She's like, I will let you escape with us. She's like, I have plans to escape. I have a person that's going to be meeting me to escape. So he's like, all right, cool. I will do this for you. He goes off to go get the recipe for the serum because he's been doing all of their archiving for this family. And so he's like, I have journals with some of it in. He's like, I just need to find it. She's like, all right, this is the meeting up point that I need you to be at this specific time. She's like, if you're not there, she's like, I will leave you. But he's like, don't worry, I will be there. So this human is going to find the serum recipe for her. She's super excited. She's like, yes. Yes. She's like, finally, something's working my way. And she ends up going to the town to buy a parting gift for Hester. And she finds this really nice leather bag because Hester apparently always has these really nice bags. Like she's very girly girl to Devon's tomboy. She's like very much wears like dresses, and skirts, and like the girl blouses and slacks and pants and stuff. She always has like this giant bag because she's an artist. She keeps a sketchbook on her with sketching materials and art supplies in there, and as well as her gun and this giant handbag. But it was destroyed when they were making their way out of London, so Devon buys her a new one. And she decides that she wants Hester to come with her, and she wants to try and make this relationship work. So when she gets back to the mansion, she tells Kai that they have the recipe, that they're going to be leaving soon, and he asks, what about Hester? She's like, I would really like for her to come. And so he's like, talk to her. What? Just ask her. And so she's like, okay. So before she goes to talk to Hester, she has a different meeting up point, which is her brother-in-law. So while she was working with Ramsay to find the Raven scars for the Knights, after he released her, she was able to get in contact with her brother-in-law and tell him what was the happy hat. It was like, what happened? What was going on? She told him, like, this is what's happening with the Knights, this is what happened with your brother. And she's like, and now there's an explosive device in my son. So she's been working with both of these two. One with Ramsay because he has this leverage over her, and then she's been working with her brother-in-law to get her away from Ramsay. So they've been working together for like almost the whole 3 years. So she goes to meet the brother-in-law because she tells him that the Knights are going to be at this place around midnight. So he's able to be like, put this on Kai. And she's like, what do you mean? And he's like, we finally figured it out. I got everything working. It's like a cummerbund that goes around Kai's whole abdomen, and it blocks signals coming in, like radio signals. So if Ramsay presses the button, nothing will happen to Kai. So he's like, and then he was like, I'll have a car and I'll be over here at this area at this time. He's like, be there, but this should protect Kai. So she takes the cummerbund from him. She goes back to the mansion. She finds Hester. As she lets Hester know, like, here, I bought this gift for you. Hester's super excited about it. And then Devon's like, so do you like it here? And Hester lets Devon know that her brother wasn't always like this. He didn't become like this until after he ate his father. It was like the reason that they developed the serum in the first place was because this family had a higher number of mind eaters than all the other families combined. And instead of killing off this large number of family members, they developed the serum so they could keep them. But she said because they kept us there, she's like, they still treated us worse, like we weren't family. Like they treated their other book eaters better than us. And so he's like, all of us kind of got fed up with it, and my brother led us. We were going to pull this coup off, and then we were going to make the serum available to all families for no price, so that we could have all the mind eaters not be persecuted. And she's like, we had all of these ideals. We were going to plan on researching some more things, and she's like, it was going to be glorious. She's like, but when they did the coup and her brother ate her father, that he changed and he decided not to. She's like, we haven't made serum in 2 years. And she's like, we're feeding on people now because we have to. She's like, I don't like it. And she's like, I don't like where my family's going. And so Devon's like, what if you were to come with me? She's like, I'm leaving. I'm planning on leaving. She's like, I got the recipe for the serum. She's like, and I'm gonna bounce. You come with me. And Hester's like, I don't know. So Devon tells her that if you want to leave, meet me at this spot at this time, and we'll leave. So Hester goes off, and Devon goes off to kind of rest and make sure that Kai's ready to go. She puts the device, the Cumberland thing, on Kai when it's close to time. She's like, all right, we're gonna meet here. She's at the spot where the meeting place is with Hester. She didn't give Hester the meeting spot with the journalist or with her brother-in-law, because she was worried that Hester would go tell her brother. And so she's sitting there, her and Kai are there, they're kind of like fidgety, and she's like, I'm losing time, I gotta go. And at the very last second, Hester comes out, and she's like, all right, let's do this. She has her brand new handbag, and she's like, all right, I'm going with you. So they leave to go to the journalist, and then while they meet up with the journalist, the knights, they can hear them throwing bombs, or bombing the mansion, and going in there with guns. And so she hears all of this noise and everything. She starts freaking out. Everybody kind of starts freaking out. She's like, they're early. And so they're following this way. They get caught by some dragons, and so they get separated. She sends Kai and Hester. She's like, get the journalist over here. She's like, I'm going to distract them. And so she runs out and distracts the dragons while they run off. And so she's running across the property, trying to keep them distracted. She's able to kill one, and then Ramsay catches her. And he's very upset that she's trying to run and killing the dragons. And so he's like, well, you brought this on yourself. And he pulls out the little remote and presses the button. And she's still worried that this won't work. So when he's pressing the button and nothing happens, she gets super excited and starts laughing at him. And she's like, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? And she's taunting him a little bit, so he goes to attack her. And they're fighting, and the dragon is still there. And he gets her, and he starts choking her. And as she's seeing spots in her head and everything, she hears a big bang. And she looks, and it's like from her peripheral vision, she sees the dragon kind of explode into dust. And then she sees Hester there with the gun. And Hester not pulls the trigger, but she goes up to Ramsay, and she's like, let her go or I'll kill you. So he lets her go, and then he starts taunting Devon, and Hester's like standing in front of Devon because Devon's still down, trying to catch her breath, trying to get back up. And when Hester looks over to Devon to ask if she's okay, Ramsay attacks. He's able to get the gun from her, and then he shoots Hester. And while Hester's down, he's monologuing while he's gonna kill Devon. So he has the gun, he's aiming it right at Devon, and before he pulls the trigger, Kai jumps on his back, and Kai feeds on him. And while this is happening, Devon is still trying to get up, and then she goes over to Hester and tries to keep her from bleeding out. And then Kai fully feeds on Ramsay, killing him. And after this happens, Hester is talking with Devin, and she's just like, I didn't think this would be the end of my fairy tale. And Devin's like, it's not. It's not. You'll be fine. Everything will be okay. And she starts freaking out. And Kai is standing there staring at her. And then he tells her he didn't hate you, you know. She's like, what are you talking about? She's like, your brother Ramsey. She's like, we didn't hate you. So she starts to get worried that Kai is becoming like the fanatical brother. And then he tells her that he's not. He's like, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I am Kai. Everything's okay. Everything's fine. He's like, we need to leave. So she picks up Hester and she carries her with Kai running along, and they meet the brother-in-law while the rest of the knights and the dragons are burning down the house. The family is fighting with the knights and everything's on fire. Everything's blowing up. And they go to the brother-in-law and they escape. And we leave them with them being in Ireland waiting for documents to travel overseas. They decide that they're going to go to the States first. And it's kind of like a happily type thing where they're really excited. The journalist is super excited that he is not captive anymore, as she's just like trying to figure out a plan for how she's going to save her daughter. And Hester's like, don't worry about it. We'll figure this out. She's like, me and you together, we got this. And it ends with them doing like this little kiss while they're like, yep, everything's going to be fine. Will they live happily ever after? The end. And I didn't care for the little kiss at the end, but it made sense in the story, but it was just very Disney in the ending. They kissed happily ever after. What I really enjoyed was the fact that this author created a species called book eaters and wrote a book about it. And that there was mind eaters in it. The whole dynamic with this was fascinating, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that what Devin did for her children. Like, even as helpless as she was a lot throughout the book, she was still kind of trying to maneuver everything to be overall the best for her kids. And she knew that her daughter would be fine until her daughter was 18. So she's been keeping a running tally in her head after she realized that she was never going to see her the way that they told her, to be like, I have this much time to save her. I have this much time to save her. And that's been going on while she was on the run with Kai, keeping him safe from Ramsey and the families and the knights and everything. And it was really neat. I really enjoyed this whole book. I really enjoyed Hester and Devin's dynamic. It was very grumpy sunshine. Hester was very sunshine, very Labrador type, and Devin was not. Devin was just like, I hate life. I'm wearing all black. I'm in my emo gothic phase. And the way they built it up. Like, you have to read the book to be able to understand how they built up their relationship. From their first initial, we're flirting. Psych, I'm gonna feed you to my son. Double psych, I'm here to take you and your son away. To actually being friends. To actually developing feelings for each other till the end, where they get to run off together. Which was great. It was just awesome. And overall, I rated this book a 5 out of 5. It ended up with the call pile system a 4.8 out of 5. But there's no 0.8s on the thing, so I rated it a 5 out of 5. I think I'm definitely going to get this book physically. I was a little sad to see that it wasn't like a start of a series. There was nothing else being in this world of the book eaters and the mind eaters, even if it was like a different family. The author did say this was just a full-on standalone. So it's a little disheartening, but it's okay. I'm super excited about it. I can't wait to read it again and enjoy the whole story again. But that was The Book Eaters. Thank you guys so much for sitting around and hanging out with me and going over this book with me. I hope you guys have an amazing day, night, afternoon, whatever it is where you are. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do all of the YouTube, Spotify things, all of that stuff. And I will hopefully talk to you guys very soon. Bye.